that?
No, I didn't. Nope, we just did. And so what we're going to do this time is we're going to really push more on the art side of things. We gave it relatively short shrift last year. So we're going to try and do some more this year with the art side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go back to, let's see, here we go. What we were doing last time, which was.
You want to review a little, back up to the beginning and just.
Marjorie had written an essay on art as a spiritual practice. And we go back, spiritual endeavor, okay. And so this is what we're talking about, and we ended up talking about Jackson Pollock's paintings and how he was trying to, again, explode the boundaries of his canvas. And here this poet seeks to speak from silence to come up with a place beyond words, using language that is really striking. So the thing we didn't do was we didn't read the poem. So here's the poem by Jory Graham, which we talked about, we never read. So we'll just run through it here. Mind, that's the title of the poem. The slow overture of rain, each drop breaking without breaking.
Can I read it? Because she
Yes.
does something, it's called enjambment. There's a
Okay.
technique to
Go
it.
ahead.
So the lines, she's deliberately crafted them to jam into each other. The way they turn is
Okay.
the slow overture of rain, each drop breaking without breaking into the next, describes the unrelented, syncopated mind. Not unlike the hummingbirds, imagining their wings to be their heart, and swallows believing the horizon to be a line they lift and drop. What is it they cast for? The poplars, advancing or retreating, lose their stature equally, and yet stand firm, making arrangements in order to become imaginary. The city draws the mind in streets. The streets compel it from their intersections where little belongs to no one. It is driven through all stationary portions of the world, gravity's stake in things. The leaves pressed against the dank window of November soil remain unwelcome till transformed, parts of a puzzle unsolvable till the edges give a bit and soften. See how then the picture becomes clear, the mind entering the ground more easily in pieces, and all the richer for it.
So
Go ahead.
this is where we were wrapping up. So poetry can take you into a very spiritual place. And the more that you read poetry, the more that you get into it, the more you appreciate the risks that Graham in her experiments, both the content and the form, as well as her task and her achievement. So the appropriateness of her use of poetry for philosophical or spiritual practice, might even ask, what else? Are they not the same? You know, the philosophical or spiritual practice and that goes with this, the ambition thoughts that are represented in mind are really not so shabby. They come from a precocious mind of someone who was just 20 in the 1970s, a self-confessed hybrid of Whitman's lyricism on the one hand, and Nietzsche's philosophy on the other. So when you're contraposing Whitman and Nietzsche, it's pretty powerful. And so this very early poem, this here inscribes an arc with a promising trajectory, a promise duly fulfilled, and the experiments and mature work of this highly complex philosophical and intellectual and also musical poet of this, what we call postmodern mind. So that's what we missed last time. I think I put one more in here. The poet Mary Oliver, many people say that Mary Oliver is the Unitarian poet laureate. So I simply picked a poem here that captures some of the mysticism that she deals with. Do you want to read this, or?
Go ahead.
Okay. At Great Pond, this is the poem. At Great Pond, the sun, rising, scrapes his orange breast on the thick pines, and down tumble a few orange feathers into the dark water. On the far shore, a white bird is standing like a white candle, or a man in the distance in the clasp of some meditation. While all around me, the lilies are breaking open again from the black cave of the night. Later, I will consider what I've seen, what it could signify, what words of adoration I might make of it. And to do this, I will go indoors to my desk. I'll sit in my chair. I'll look back into the lost morning in which I am moving now, like a swimmer, so smoothly, so peacefully, I am almost a lily, almost the bird vanishing over the water on its sleeves of night. So you see the imagery that she has here of having the breast of the sun and the feathers of the sunlight coming down, and the view of probably an egret who's in, looks like someone in meditation on the far shore. Just all of these, very powerful, very, very punchy pictures that are left with you. So
I like the way she plays with time, that the poem will be written after this moment, but she's reporting the moment in the present tense.
right.
And so she's going back and forth. What I liked about Jory Graham's poem was that it's written like in this really narrow column. So the words are just kind of running into each other down in this single flow. It's like a pun of, I think she's evoking the way the mind works in this just kind of flow of, verbiage. But it's, I was lucky that at the time I was given this assignment, it was by an academic publisher. There was an article in the Sunday Times about this poem. It was a bizarre synchronicity because it was so many years after it was published. But this guy, or I don't know if it was this poem in particular, but it was her work in particular that I was responding to, which is always a great opportunity, especially because I really disagreed with him.
So now we're going to switch over to we're going to do first Walt Whitman and then Emily Dickinson, but we're not going to talk about their life so much. We're just going to deal with their poetry. So we're going to start here. Whitman wrote a poem called Song of Myself. So I'm going to see if I can just kick this on with this YouTube here. Yes, we can.
You've written a successful poem when
You just
people
have to
really
get by
think it
this ad.
happened.
Formed from this
Just
soil.
a sec, it started down here.
Song of Myself by Walt Whitman. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume, you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here, of parents born here, from parents the same, and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health, begin hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard. Nature without check, with original energy. Houses and rooms are full of perfumes. The shelves are crowded with perfumes. I breathe the fragrance myself, and know it and like it. The distillation would intoxicate me also, but I shall not let it. The atmosphere is not a perfume. It has no taste of the distillation. It is odorless. It is for my mouth forever. I am in love with it. I will go to the bank by the wood and become undisguised and naked. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. The smoke of my own breath, echoes, ripples, buzzed whispers, love root, silk thread, crotch and vine, my respiration and inspiration, the beating of my heart, the passing of blood and air through my lungs, the sniff of green leaves and dry leaves, and of the shore and dark-colored sea rocks, and the hay in the barn, the sound of the belched words of my voice, words loose to the eddies of the wind, a few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching around of arms, the play of shine and shade on the trees as the supple boughs wag, the delight alone, or in the rush of the streets, or along the fields and hillsides, the feeling of health, the full noon trill, the song of me rising from bed and meeting the sun. Have you reckoned 1,000 acres much? Have you reckoned the earth much? Have you practiced so long to learn to read? Have you felt so proud to get at the meaning of poems? Stop this day and night with me, and you shall possess the origin of all poems. You shall possess the good of the earth and sun. There are millions of suns left. You shall no longer take things second or third hand, nor look through the eyes of the dead, nor feed on the specters in books. You shall not look through my eyes either, nor take things from me. You shall listen to all sides and filter them from yourself.
So there we have, let me see if I can get out of this. We might have got kicked off. Hold on. Here we go. Just a sec, I'm going to go get out of screen share and go back to, here we are. Oops. So what you see there is Whitman's poetry was radical for its time. It really couldn't be published, so he had to self-publish this. This was a collection of poems called Leaves of Grass, and we only heard an excerpt of this one song of myself, but you can see it's very different than Roses Are Red, Violets Are Blue. It deals with his type of free verse style, and he just likes this what would be called a simple legible style that anybody can understand, but it's very deep, the ideas that he's raising here. And the critics of Whitman noted there was a strong transcendental influence with Emerson, and I'm sure Thoreau was in there too, but the whole group of them. He wanted to live among animals and to find divinity in the insects. That was part of it. And so it's, in that sense, this is very romantic, and it's presenting a realism that really would only appear in the United States literature after the Civil War. An example of this is Stephen Crane's book, The Red Badge of Courage, where he's describing what it's like to be in battle in the Civil War, and it's highly realistic. So what Whitman is doing here is, again, a very realistic, but very romantic, very transcendental in the scheme of things. So here's a different example here that I just put into this directly. The lunatic is carried at last to the asylum, a confirmed case. He will never sleep anymore as he did in the cot in his mother's bedroom. The juror printer with gray head and gaunt jaws works at his case. He turns his quid of tobacco while his eyes blur with the manuscript. The malformed limbs are tied to the surgeon's table. What is removed drops horribly in a pail. The quadroon girl is sold at the auction stand. The drunkard nods by the stove. Quadroon is, at that time, there were many people that were either Native Americans or Blacks, and then they would marry Caucasians. And so the resulting offspring, 1/4 would be Caucasian and the other 3/4 would be Native American or Black. So it's a term of the time, pre-Civil War.
It was a French system that went up to 30 seconds, I believe.
Right. Yeah, I think you can still be in the Native and a Cherokee tribe. So another one that Whitman did is I Sing the Body Electric. So again, we've got another YouTube video here. Let's see if this works.
Patanjali's Yoga Sutras start in a strange way. And now
We've been
I've
studying
seen the body
those.
electric. Walt Whitman, 1819 to 1892. Leaves of Grass, 1900. 1. I seen the body electric. The armies of those I love engirth me, and I engirth them. They will not let me off till I go with them, respond to them, and discorrupt them, and charge them full with the charge of the soul. Was it doubted that those who corrupt their own bodies conceal themselves, and if those who defile the living are as bad as they who defile the dead, and if the body does not do as much as the soul, and if the body were not the soul, what is the soul? 2. The love of the body of man or woman balks account. The body itself balks account. That of the male is perfect, and that of the female is perfect. The expression of the face balks account, but the expression of a well-made man appears not only in his face, it is in his limbs and joints also. It is curiously in the joints of his hips and wrists. It is in his walk, the carriage of his neck, the flex of his waist and knees. Dress does not hide him. The strong, sweet, supple quality he has strikes through the cotton and flannel. To see him pass conveys as much as the best poem, perhaps more. You linger to see his back, and the back of his neck and shoulder side. The sprawl and fullness of babes, the bosoms and heads of women, the folds of their dress, their style as we pass in the street, the contour of their shape downwards. the swimmer naked in the swimming bath, seen as he swims through the transparent green shine, or lies with his face up and rolls silently to and fro in the heave of the water. The bending forward and backward of rowers in rowboats, the horseman in his saddle, girls, mothers, housekeepers, in all their performances, the group of laborers seated at noontime with their open dinner kettles and their wives waiting, the female soothing a child, the farmer's daughter in the garden or coward, the young fellow hoeing the corn, the sleigh driver guiding his 6 horses through the crowd, the wrestle of wrestlers, 2 apprentice boys, quite grown, lusty, good-natured, native-born, out on the vacant lot at sundown. After work, the coats and caps thrown down, the embrace of love and resistance, the upper hold and the under hold, the hair rumpled over and blinding the eyes. The march of firemen in their own costumes, the play of masculine muscle through clean setting trousers and waist straps, the slow return from the fire, the pause when the bell strikes suddenly again, and the listening and the alert, the natural, perfect, varied attitudes, the bent head, the curved neck, and the counting. Such like I love. I loosen myself, pass freely, and with the mother's breast with a little child, swim with the swimmers, wrestle with wrestlers, march in line with the firemen, and pause, listen, and count. 3. I know a man, a common farmer, the father of 5 sons, and in them were the fathers of sons, and in them were the fathers of sons. This man was of wonderful vigor, calmness, beauty of person, the shape of his head, the pale yellow and white of his hair and beard, and the immeasurable meaning of his black eyes, the richness and breadth of his manner. These I used to go and visit him to see. He was wise also. He was 6 feet tall. He was over 80 years old. His sons were massive, clean, bearded, tan-faced, handsome. They and his daughters loved him. All who saw him loved him. They did not love him by allowance. They loved him with personal love. He drank water only. The blood showed like scarlet through the clear brown skin of his face. He was a frequent gunner and fisher. He sailed his boat himself. He had a fine one presented to him by a ship joiner. He had fowling pieces presented to him by men that loved him. When he went with his 5 sons and many grandsons to hunt or fish, he would pick him out as the most beautiful and vigorous of the gang. You would wish long and long to be with him. You would wish to sit by him in the boat, that you and he might touch each other. 4. I have perceived that to be with those I like is enough. To stop in company with the rest at evening is enough. To be surrounded by beautiful, curious, breathing, laughing flesh is enough. To pass among them or touch anyone, or rest my arm ever so lightly around his or her neck for a moment. What is this then? I do not ask any more delight. I swim in it as in a sea. There is something in staying close to men and women, and looking on them, and in the contact and odor of them that pleases the soul well. All things please the soul, for these please the soul well. 5. This is the female form. A divine nimbus exhales from it from head to foot. It attracts with fierce, undeniable attraction. I am drawn by its breath as if I were no more than a helpless vapor. All falls aside by myself in it. Books, art, religion, time, the visible and solid earth, the atmosphere and the clouds, and what was expected of heaven or feared of hell are now consumed. Mad filaments, ungovernable shoots play out of it, the response likewise ungovernable. Hair, bosom, hips, bend of legs, negligent falling hands, all diffused, mine too diffused. Ebb stunned by the flow, and flow stunned by the ebb, love flesh swelling and deliciously aching. Limitless limpid jets of love, hot and enormous, quivering jelly of love, white blow and delirious juice. Bridegroom night of love, working surely and softly into the prostrate dawn, undulating into the willing and yielding day, lost in the cleave of the clasping and sweet-fleshed day. This is the nucleus. After the child is born of woman, the man is born of woman. This is the bath of birth. This is the merge of small and large, and the outlet again. Be not ashamed, women. Your privilege encloses the rest, and is the exit of the rest. You are the gates of the body, and you are the gates of the soul. The female contains all qualities and tempers them. She is in her place and moves with perfect balance. She has all things duly veiled. She is both passive and active. She is to conceive daughters as well as sons, and sons as well as daughters. As I see my soul reflected in nature, as I see through a mist, one with inexpressible completeness and beauty, see the bent head and arms folded over the breast, the female I see. 6. The male is not less the soul, no more, he too is in his place. He too is all qualities. He is action and power. The flesh of the known universe is in him. Scorn becomes him well, and appetite and defiance becomes him well. The wildest, largest passions, bliss that is utmost, sorrow that is utmost, become him well. Pride is for him. The full spread pride of man is calming and excellent to the soul. Knowledge becomes him. He likes it always. He brings everything to the test of himself, whatever the survey, whatever the sea and the sail. He strikes soundings at last, only here. Where else does he strike soundings except here? The man's body is sacred, and the woman's body is sacred. No matter who it is sacred. Is it a slave? Is it one of the dull-faced immigrants just landed on the wharf? Each belongs here or anywhere, just as much as the well-off, just as much as you. Each has his or her place in the procession. All is a procession. The universe is a procession with measured and beautiful motion. Do you know so much yourself that you call the slave or the dull-faced ignorant? Do you suppose you have a right to a good sight, and he or she has no right to a sight? Do you think matter has cohered together from its diffuse float, and the soil is on the surface, and water runs and vegetation sprouts, for you only and not for him and her? 7. A man's body at auction. I help the auctioneer. The sloven does not half know his business. Gentlemen, look on this wonder. Whatever the bids of the bidders, they cannot be high enough for it. For it the globe lay preparing quintillions of years, without one animal or plant, for it revolving, cycles truly and steadily rolled. And this had the all-baffling brain, in it and below it the makings of heroes. Examine these limbs, red, black, or white. They are so cunning and tendon and nerve, they shall be stripped, that you may see them. Exquisite senses, life-lit eyes, pluck, volition, flakes of breast muscle, pliant backbone and neck, flesh not flabby, good-sized arms and legs, and wonders within there yet. Within there runs blood, the same old blood, the same red running blood. There swells and jets a heart. There are all passions, desires, reachings, aspirations. Do you think they are not there because they are not expressed in parlors and lecture rooms? This is not only one man. This is the father of those who shall be fathers in their turns. In him the start of populous states and rich republics, of him countless immortal lives, with countless embodiments and enjoyments. How do you know who shall come from the offspring of his offspring through the centuries? Who might you find you have come from yourself, if you could trace back through the centuries? 8. A woman's body at auction. She too is not only herself, she is the teeming mother of mothers. She is the bearer of them and shall grow and be mates to the mothers. Have you ever loved the body of a woman? Have you ever loved the body of a man? Your father, where is your father? Your mother, is she living? Have you been much with her? And has she been much with you? Do you not see that these are exactly the same to all, in all nations and times all over the earth? If anything is sacred, the human body is sacred, and the glory and sweet of a man is the token of manhood untainted, and a man or woman, a clean, strong, firm, fibered woman, as beautiful as the most beautiful face. Have you seen the fool that corrupted his own live body, or the fool that corrupted her own live body? For they do not conceal themselves, and cannot conceal themselves. 9. O my body, I dare not desert the likes of you and other men and women, nor the likes of the parts of you. I believe the likes of you are to stand or fall in the likes of the soul, and that they are the soul. I believe the likes of you shall stand or fall with my poems, and that they are poems. Man's, woman's, child's, youth's, wife's, husband's, mother's, father's, young man's, young women's poems. Head, neck, hair, ears, drop and tympan of the ears. Eyes, eye fringes, iris of the eye, eyebrows, and the waking or sleeping of the kid. Mouth, tongue, lips, teeth, roof of the mouth, jaws, and the jaw hinges, nose, nostrils of the nose and the partition, cheeks, temples, forehead, chin, throat, back of the neck slew, strong shoulders, manly beard, scapula, hind shoulders, and the ample side round of the chest. Upper arm, armpit, elbow socket, lower arm sinews, arm bones, wrist and wrist joints, hand, palm, knuckles, thumb, forefinger, finger balls, finger joints, fingernails, broad breast front, curling hair of the breast, breastbone, breast side, ribs, belly, backbone, joints of the backbone, hips, hip sockets, hip strength, inward and outward round, man balls, man root, strong set of thighs, well carrying the trunk above, leg fibers, knee pan, upper leg, under leg, ankles, instep, football, toes, toe joints, and the heel. All attitudes, all the shape lanes, all the belongings of my or your body, or of anyone's body, male or female. The lung sponges, the stomach sac, the bowels sweet and clean, sympathies, heart valves, palate valves, sexuality, maternity, womanhood, and all that is a woman, and the man that comes from woman, the womb, the teats, nipples, breast milk, tears, laughter, weeping, love looks, love perpetrations and risings. The voice, articulation, language, whispering, shouting aloud, food, drink, pulse, digestion, sweat, sleep, walking, swimming, poise on the hips, leaping, reclining, embracing, arm curving and tightening. The continual changes of the flex of the mouth and around the eyes, the skin, the sunburnt shade, freckles, hair, the curious sympathy one feels when feeling with the hand the naked meat of the body, the circling rivers, the breath and breathing in and out, the beauty of the waist, advance of the hips, and thence downward toward the knees, the thin red jellies within you or within me, the bones and the marrow in the bones, the exquisite realization of health. Oh, I say, these are not the parts and poems of the body only, but of the soul. Oh, I say now, these are the soul.
How do we get this thing here? I just don't want to. Oh, I'm still on screen share. That's what the problem is. Sorry about that.
Who just came?
But was out. So now let me just go to here. Oh, wait. So this is, what we have on Whitman. And this long poem here, I sing the body electric. The other one, Song of Myself, is much, much longer. But I just put in here that the science fiction writer Ray Bradbury wrote a short story in this, and it actually was used there was a show in the early 60s called Twilight Zone, and one of the shows was I Sing the Body Electric. It's actually about robots. So they created robots that looked human, and when they opened them up, they were electric. So that's how they used it here. I Sing the Body Electric. But it's been used again and again. Whitman, I think, created it, but all kinds of people have picked up on it. And even in the movie Bull Durham, it showed up there in terms of reading the poem that we just had. So So that is it for Whitman. Now we're going to switch over to, wait on, I got to go to, I don't want to go here, I want to go to,
Whitman and Emily Dickinson are considered to be really the two mystic poets of the Unitarians. And Whitman made a pilgrimage really to meet with Emerson in Amherst, who really liked him, I think to his credit. And Emily Dickinson was just appalled by him because she thought he was just kind of this wild man. So I think for her, it would be a kind of strange juxtaposition to be paired with him. But they were two of my mother's favorite poets, and she taught them both in a unit that she taught in the local public high school, which was integrated in Norwalk on the American Transcendentalists. So they're very, very different. He just goes on and on with these inventories, I always call them, of these, the teacups and the monkeys in the jungle, and, just like this inventory of reality. But what I like about him myself is the way he's using his self as his instrument of perception.
I think you can see Whitman had a very full life, and he's clearly seen all kinds of things and is able to evoke great images. He was describing an auction, a slave auction there in the midst of this, or he's doing this taxonomy of your body, but he's not simply male, he's doing it for the female as well, and on and on. So the Emily Dickinson, as we saw, is very much of a recluse. She only had 10 of her poems published in her lifetime. And after she died, they discovered there were like 1,800 poems there that no one knew about, that she had just written over the years. And it became clear over a period of time that she was one of the great poets of the 19th century in America. And as you'll see in a second, the
very much kind of in a lot of ways his opposite, because she zeroed in so closely. He was like a telescope looking out at the world, and I think a generalist looking for the overarching principles. She was zeroing in with a microscope into the minutia, but seeing the universe in a grain of sand.
Yeah. So just for a little bit of levity, one of these critics pointed out that all of these Emily Dickinson poems could be put to the lyrics of this little jingle that Coca-Cola cooked up. So as you listen to these Emily Dickinson poems, keep this in mind.
I'd like to buy the world a home and furnish it with love. Grow apple trees and honey bees and snow white turtle doves. I like to teach the world to sing with me. Perfect harmony, perfect harmony. I like to buy the world a book and keep it company. That's the real thing. I like to teach the world to sing perfect harmony, and I'd like to buy the world a coat and keep it company. It's the real thing. What the world wants today is the real thing. What the world wants today is the real thing.
So now we're going to
What
go.
is that? Iambic pentameter?
Shambhavi Mahamudra is a miraculous process because in 21 minutes, what it is doing
Oh, I know.
is quite
I
incredible.
keep forgetting this. me get rid of this. Get rid of this. I keep forgetting I have to go to share screen to find these things. Here we are. So now here, this is going to be a little short 3-minute bio of Emily Dickinson, just to set the stage. And then we'll do a poem. And you can ask yourself if you can take this poem and set it to those words.
The music.
Yeah.
Emily Dickinson is a famous U.S. poet whose poems are still read and enjoyed by people today. Known for being a recluse, Dickinson had much time on her hands to write her works. Emily Elizabeth Dickinson was born on December 10, 1830 in Amherst, Massachusetts. Her parents were Emily Norcross Dickinson and Edward Dickinson, and she was the middle child out of 3. Growing up, Dickinson went to a school called Amherst Academy and was a very bright student. Once she was old enough, she attended Mount Holyoke Seminary. It was here that Dickinson began to show her true distrust in conventional religion, something that was definitely out of the norm at the time. Every morning, the students would be asked to separate into 2 groups, saved and unsaved. Dickinson always went over to the unsaved side, insisting that she would not go to heaven. After only a year at Mount Holyoke, Dickinson decided to leave school. Once she left school, she simply stayed up in her room, most of the time writing poetry. She very rarely came out, and when she did, it surprised a lot of the town. Even though Dickinson didn't leave her house very much, she still had friends and family. Probably her closest friend was her sister-in-law, Susan, whom she wrote to very much. She addressed many of her poems to her. Some even say that she may have liked her more than just a friend, perhaps a lover? She would send poems to those she knew well, sending small poetry books called fascicles to her close friends. Her family did not know about these fascicles until after her death. Dickinson died of kidney disease in her hometown of Amherst, Mass. On May 15, 1886, at the age of 55. Very little of Dickinson's poetry was published at the time of her death. In fact, her first volume of poetry wasn't released until 1890. A full collection of her poems was released in 1955. Finally, a chance for everyone to have access to her poems. Though Dickinson was a recluse, she accomplished a lot in her life. She wrote nearly 1,800 poems, poems that are still enjoyed by readers today. She was truly an amazing poet.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the first poem here. If I can stop one heart from breaking.
If you want to eat healthy and feel your best, you gotta try Kachava. Kachava is the world.
I can stop not if I can peace one my feeling.
So there you can see the contrast. That was the entire poem. and it was, what, 10 lines? But in its own way, it conveyed a very powerful set of images. That's just who she was. By the way, they talked about her being a recluse, but she did go walk a dog around the Amherst Green, but she always dressed in white. So she was always called the woman of white, woman in white, by the people in town. And that's really all they saw, her walking the dog. When people went to talk to her in her house, she actually was, a lot of times was in her room, and she'd just have them stand on the other side of the door. She'd have the door locked, and she'd talk to them through the door, which is how much of a recluse she was. So anyway.
They think she might have had some mild form of epilepsy.
Yeah.
That kind of gave her visions.
Yeah, it might not have been mild. But she kept talking about these visions that she had, and the most likely source for those people, because the poetry is so striking, the source for this would be the epileptic fits that she was having, and she was never in great health. So now let's go back to this, and we'll go forward one more. And this is a poem called I Taste a Liquor Never Brewed, which again, you can see how different she is, how she views things. And one of the problems was, because this is so different, that they actually would rewrite the poem before they would publish it. This is one of her few poems that was published while she was alive, and actually was published anonymously, and it was heavily, edited. So here's the original wording here in the poem: I taste a liquor never brewed. That didn't get changed. From tankards scooped in pearl. That didn't get changed. But then we go, not all the Frankfurt berries, not Frankfurt berries yield the, what does it say? Yield the sense. Yield such an alcohol. Instead, it's such a delicious world. So she had something, she herself was not drinking any alcohol other than what she got out of these berries, and they rewrote the thing so that you think you did get drunk, having this, and that made it more acceptable to the editors of the magazine that published this thing in. So let's just listen to this poem here.
My name is Ariel, and I just started my first job as a project manager. When I was a student, I'd write long essays.
Emily Dickinson's poem, I Taste a Liquor Never Brewed, consists of 4 stanzas, which generally adhere to Dickinson's typical use of ballad meter. The speaker relates how she is becoming inebriated by the glories of summer. As a matter of fact, the natural world is a liquor never brewed, that is, not distilled by humans. Throughout the poem, Dickinson uses the language and imagery of intemperate alcohol consumption to describe how the beauty of summer affects the speaker. She is drunk on the air and the dew, reeling from the blue of the skies. Unwilling to stop in her mild intoxication, in the 3rd stanza, she vows to continue imbibing even after fellow revelers in nature, bees and butterflies, cease their drinking. Her joy in the powerful effects of nature will not stop until she reaches the sun, an event that will draw the attraction of seraphs and saints. This poem describes the speaker's enjoyment of nature's beauty in one long conceit involving drunkenness. The speaker continues to drink, metaphorically, throughout the poem, becoming more and more inebriated until she can no longer stand up straight and must lean against the sun at the end of the poem. In creating this conceit, Dickinson expresses a voice of the temperance literature common in her day, a time when per capita alcohol consumption in the United States was high, and the temperance movement itself was growing increasingly vocal. Interposed with the imagery of inebriation are images of natural phenomena, described through Dickinson's characteristic eye for detail. From pearl tankards or steins, the speaker consumes alcoholic beverages that surpass anything produced by the vintners along the Rhine River in Germany, an area known for its wines. Reeling or staggering drunkenly out of inns of molten blue, which refer to the liquid blue of the summer sky, she is more intoxicated than the bees that the landlords of the foxgloves might turn out of their inns for being too drunk. Even when the butterflies renounce their drams or shots when they give up drinking, she vows to continue becoming drunk on the beauty of nature until she reaches the ultimate object of nature, the sun.
So you can see, again, very powerful imagery, but again, not something that was conventional. That's why she had trouble getting these things published. But
I don't think she even tried much.
yeah, no, I think it was more since she was doing, her parents knew she was doing poetry, so they just asked her, can she do some, try and get some things published. So now let's see.
Did you save that other crazy video?
Which other one? I think, is this it for? I think we might be done with Emily Dickinson. It was just these two poems. I'm gonna just go check to see.
There was that other video.
Which other one? With the, oh no, wait, there's something else here. Here we go. Yeah, we're not done.
Okay, this one I think is it. This guy was a nut, but I thought he was great.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't. There's a critic. I didn't include him. He's doing a short course on Dickinson, a crash course on YouTube. But I didn't.
You chickened out?
Yeah, I chickened out on it.
Oh.
Why won't this thing? Well, here we go. We'll go to the, hope is the thing with feathers. Now, again, amazing imagery.
All around the world, tech companies are innovating and driving returns for investors. At Our Crowd,
Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that kept so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and on the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me.
And again, you can see how short all of these Dickinson poems are versus what we saw with Whitman. So let me just go back to.
I thought, yeah. We agree on things and then he doesn't do it. So
What I don't understand here is
death. I could not stop for death, but it stopped for me. I thought that.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm looking. We have that. I know we do. I'm just puzzled as to why this thing doesn't want to advance. Close this. to set. Yeah, so here, what's going on is that the opening is reversed, putting all the color and emphasis on the word hope. Hope is the thing with feathers, not the feathers are the thing. And the rest of the poem has this iambic meter just to continue hope song through time, just again and again. And this is typical of what she does. It's very pretty to the ear, to my ear, but it's not actually about the bird. It's about hope. So that's what happens. Now here we have, because I could not stop for death. This again, the title catches you. This is a very unusual.
Shambhavi Mahamudra is a miraculous process because in 21 minutes, what it is doing to you.
Because I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove, at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun, or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer my gown, my tippet only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity.
So there you have the.
Oh, I can't stand this version.
We're not going to do this one.
Okay.
There you have. Again, a lot of imagery. The cornice in the ground is referring to the grave, and so forth. But you can see just Whitman versus Dickinson, just incredibly different poets, but both, I think, very, very powerful in what they do. I'm going to just check to see if we're done.
I would say uniquely American. And it was a real step away from English poetry to do something that was uniquely American. It was a new voice that they were both, really striving to create. And I think that's what Emerson appreciated about both of them.
Right. So here's the final one. I'm nobody, who are you? And we'll go to this one first.
I am nobody. Who are you? By Emily Dickinson.
Into songs?
I am nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too?
Yeah, we had the first
Then
one.
there's a pair of us. Don't dull. They'd advertise, How dreary to be somebody. How public like a frog. To tell one's name the livelong day. To an admiring bog.
Now we're just going to do the other version of this that is here.
You are just a few weeks away from being able to play music by ear, no matter what you think your natural abilities are.
I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? And there's a pair of us. Don't tell that advertisement, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a fraud. To tell one's name the livelong June. To an admiring ball. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a fraud. To tell one's name the livelong June. To an admiring ball.
So there you can see how easy it is, I think, to put the poetry of Emily Dickinson to music. And you can always sing your Coke jingle along with it. You have something to take away. Any other? I think we're.
I have a comment, if I may.
Yes. Go ahead.
The blurb that you showed states a preference of Emily Dickinson to anonymity versus fame. I don't read the poem that way at all. I read it as a preference for being nobody by society's definition of who someone is, and that she determines who she is not by society's standards but by her own. I don't read it as have anything to do with fame versus anonymity.
I wouldn't dispute what you're saying. She's clearly a very strong-willed person. She did it her way. So, and she didn't really care what other people, thought. She never got married. So it goes. It makes you wonder how you could be such a great poet and yet never want to share these poems with anybody till after you've passed on.
I don't think she thought there was much audience there for her, but I don't think she thought that was her deficiency.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah. So.
And she was right, I think. And so far ahead of her time.
Yeah, just like Whitman was ahead of his time. People didn't know what to do with this, the poems that he wrote. So, but if you get into these things and you read them one after another, it really is a mystical experience. You get caught up in the imagery, and everything just gets suspended all around you. It's incredible how they view things, how they are able to capture this in language and bring others to see this.
I feel that they both opened doors, well, in my consciousness anyway, but I think in consciousness itself, they're just kind of poking holes in the fabric that most of us kind of agree to limit ourselves with, and they're, what I say is they're doing it in a Western way. I think we tend to defer spirituality to the East, and I think this is a different kind of, what Huxley said, the doors of perception, a different way of opening the doors of perception to the infinite. And to me, that's part of what spirituality is. It's seeing that larger reality than the day-to-day existence that we kind of submit to and feel so dissatisfied by.
Sure.
I think that's what is behind a lot of addiction, for a lot of people, is this hunger for this larger reality that we intuit is there. But I think they had a kind of meditative discipline that wasn't taught. They found their own path to it.
And I think they're almost going into meditation. Whitman and Emily Dickinson, when they write these things, they're just totally zoned out and caught up with that's how they come up with this imagery that's there in the word selection, and the meters that they come up with are incredible.
She was a master at off rhymes and internal rhymes that I like so much. It's not that da 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 that so much poetry just hits you over the head. They opened it up to this much subtler kind of spreading it out,
Right.
kind of canvas of possibilities that I think was just so creative. And my sense is he was very much a man of the world, but also a loner at the same time. But they had to really have a very strong inner compass of their own to find their own way. They weren't taught, they weren't cultivated, they weren't part of a school or part of a community. And, they kind of found their own way in this amazing pursuit that, it's like you just wonder, especially in that time, what moved them to do it.
Right. Right. So we're gonna close here by going now to the east to India. And the mystic experience here is actually doing mathematics. So the individual Srinivasa Ramanujan was born toward the end of the 1880s and only lived till 1920. So he died at age 32. But the mathematics that he developed over his lifetime really are the mathematics for the 21st century. People today are just starting to figure out what he did. And he produced over 7,000, they were called assertions because a lot of times he didn't prove them. But it was so obvious to him, why bother to write it down? But most mathematicians look for proof. They look for some backup. And so now thousands of these things, there's very few that haven't been proved, but when people go back and revisit them, they realize that it was the tip of the iceberg and that he was pointing to other things as well that were incredibly deeper than any of them saw. So let's just go here. There's a bunch of books out here by him that we drew this from, plus Wikipedia. And here's a short little bio of him that you'll see, what his life is like. I think this thing is like 3 minutes.
It's time to leave Frontier's outdated internet behind and get the latest technology from Optimum, now delivering fast internet up to...
Competitive advertising.
Imagine someone mastering trigonometry by the age of 13, solving infinite series by the age of 14, and inventing new ways to solve higher order equations by the age of 15. All of this without any formal training in mathematics. That someone was none other than S. Ramanujan, the man who knew infinity. In his short life of just 32 years, Ramanujan changed the course of mathematics. But the man had his own share of struggle. Ramanujan was born in Madras, British India, to a very humble family. His father was a clerk in a shop and his mother, a housewife who sang at a local temple. At an early age, Ramanujan showed signs of his mathematical genius, but he struggled a lot at other subjects, often failing in them. When he was 11 years old, he was gifted a book on trigonometry. Ramanujan mastered trigonometry in just 2 years, but the book that really changed his life was the one that contained 5,000 theorems, which he studied in detail. By 16, he was developing his own theorems. Back in 1900s, mathematics was not an option to make a living in India. He showed his work to many foreign mathematicians, but all of them said that Ramanujan was unconventional and lacked a formal education. But when his work came across the desk of G.H. Hardy in England, the latter could not believe his eyes. Hardy decided to call Ramanujan to England. Hardy, along with his colleague Littlewood, further examined Ramanujan's work, after which Littlewood said, "I think we can compare him with the great German mathematician Jacobi." In England, Ramanujan made a great progress working with Hardy and Littlewood. Ramanujan was exceptionally good at infinite series. Before him, there was an infinite series for pi. The problem was that it was very slow. It took 600 terms to come to the value of 3.14. Ramanujan, on the other hand, developed a series that would converge to 3.141592 just after one term. After spending time with him, Littlewood told Hardy, "Forget Jacobi, we can compare him with Newton." Another famous incident that shows Ramanujan's genius was when Hardy once came to meet him. When he got there, he told Ramanujan that the cab's number 1729 was rather a dull one. Ramanujan said, "No, it is a very interesting number. It is the smallest number expressible as a sum of two cubes in two different ways. 1 cube plus 12 cube and 9 cube plus 10 cube. This number is now known as the Hardy-Ramanujan number." The best incident that is noteworthy is when Hardy came up with a scale of mathematical ability that went from 0 to 100. He put himself at 25. David Hilbert, a great mathematician, was at 80. Ramanujan was at 100.
So we just try and, there's not that much on these slides, so let me just run through
So
them.
did you see they're having trouble seeing the videos?
Were people having trouble seeing the video? No, I thought the question was, could you get the videos? And all the videos, all the URLs are on every slide.
No, actually, the question was whether anyone else other than me could see the videos, because I could not see the videos as they were playing. I was just listening to them.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I think everybody could see them. We could see them, and we're in screen share.
No,
So-
I could
No.
only see the slide, no video.
I could only hear.
I see, okay. That's interesting. Was that true on all of these? With going to
Yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah, just
On all of them.
So it must be when I go into screen share that I can't, I had the links on these slides and I have to just go into, start up the YouTube video and then go back into screen share and capture the YouTube screen, not the rest of them. That's what I'll have to do. So thank you. I mean, we don't know this because we were sitting there looking at the video.
We're sorry.
Yeah, we apologize. So, so anyway, you see something.
We'll send out the slides with the link. So if
Yeah.
you want to, you'll be able to see them on your own at home.
Right. So, you know, what you have here is that Ramanujan was in India, and you know there was you know, really not a lot of people he could interact with. He was really self-taught, and he was just caught up with this. And finally, he sent off some of his, again, they'd be called assertions. They're not proofs. They're assertions of various, typically series. You saw an example where he was calculating pi as a sum of terms, a series of terms. And so he sent this off to G.H. Hardy at the University of Cambridge, who was really one of the premier mathematicians in England in the 1910, 1920 time frame. And Hardy, you know, thought, well, this guy's, you know, he gets these things all the time. And he started looking at it and he said, my God, there's something here. And then he shared it with his colleague Littlewood, and Littlewood looked at it and he said, you know, like this thing that he's written up here was just proven last year. You know, I mean, he did this entirely on his own, not knowing anything. And so they got him to come to Cambridge. And the thing is, he'd never run into anything like this. It was, I mean, what could you say? So here they came up with 3,900 results, but I think the numbers actually now have been changed to like 7,000, because they started going through these lost notebooks, which were only found in 1976, and ended up having, you know, all kinds of things in it. They were there, and you know, he had these little things in 2012, just a little, you know, one-liner about comments about simple properties and similar outputs. When people started looking at what these simple properties were and simple outputs, they started to realize there are all kinds of other things here that he had left out and that people didn't even realize were going on. and this is a century after he died, okay? He became one of the youngest fellows of the Royal Society, and only second Indian member and the first Indian ever to become a fellow of Trinity College in Cambridge. And so it goes. So in 1919, when he was in failing health, he returned to India where he died, and he was still on his deathbed, producing all kinds of things, which of course were lost until 1976. So the thing here is he was a very deeply religious Hindu, but he credited his work in mathematics, his ability to do this to God, to divinity. And he said that the knowledge that he displayed was revealed to him by the family goddess Namagiri Thayer. He said, an equation for me has no meaning unless it expresses a thought of God. So here we have someone like this. We have, as a different example, we have Mozart, who said, well, when I start to actually write down music, I've actually see the whole thing in my head. It's all fully formed, and all I have to do is transcribe it.
He said it was like taking dictation. Right,
and so that's what you see Ramanujan here doing this in mathematics. The thing is that no one had ever seen things like this before, let alone so many of them. It's you know, you can come up with one of these things, but to come up with hundreds or thousands of them, you're not dealing with someone who's, you know, a normal quote unquote mathematician. So the Ramanujan had to go through all kinds of hoops to get to actually get out of India. He was you know, he was asked finally by this one mathematician what he wanted, and he said, oh, I need some work and I need some financial support. So he sent him to Madras, and that's where he started to get things published. And this is just an example. One of the first problems that he actually posed in a journal was to find the value of the square root of 1 plus the square root of 1 plus 3, the square root of 1 plus the square root of 1 plus 4, you know, and so forth. The thing goes on and on. And so nobody was looking at this had any idea how in the world to go evaluate this. And he showed them that the answer was 3. If you evaluate this whole thing here, and he just plugged in some numbers to show how it would all work out, which was just typical of him. Who would, first of all, who would even come up with this sort of thing, let alone, you know, have the thing come out that simple? So he ended up, you know, dealing with things like that. But one of the things that came out of this was there was a mathematician, Bernoulli, who had invented a sequence of numbers, the so-called Bernoulli numbers, and the denominators of the fractions of the Bernoulli numbers were always divisible by 6. Now I have no idea how in the world you would ever figure that out. The denominators of the fractions, the denominators are divisible by 6, not the numbers, you know, the denominators. So he ends up, you know, trying to go show this, and you know, ends up with a you know, a nice little proof for doing this. And he gave, you know, a series of proofs in this paper on this whole thing. And initially, you know, he got fried. The people that were reviewing the paper for publication said there were all kinds of flaws in it. Didn't do this, it didn't do that. And the problem was that his methods were so terse and so novel, no one had ever seen anything. And his presentation was so lacking. He would simply be writing things down. That's the problem with his notebooks. is that he'd just be writing down series after series, line after line. There's nothing there. Because he's doing this for himself. There's no text that explains, how did I get from this line to that line? How did I get from that line to the next line? There's nothing there. So you have no idea what in the world he's doing. And so finally, he ended up in 1912 getting a job in the accountant general's office. And he applied for a position under the chief accountant. And, you know, I understand there's a position available. I've passed the matriculation exams, et cetera, but I'd really like to work on math. And so he'd been accepted, and he got moved up to making 30 rupees a month. And after a while, the guy figured out that this guy was an incredible mathematician, and moved him off into elsewhere in India. And he just kind of moved up the hierarchy until he finally got to Cambridge, where he got to Hardy. And this one result that he'd sent in had been actually worked out in 1859, but the other result was new and was missed by Euler, by Gauss, and by this guy Bauer. You know, it's just that he just had so many things that Hardy said he couldn't do these things. He'd never seen anyone that could come up with these things. So they looked at everything, and, you know, had him come to Cambridge, and he ended up, you know, after a while, he spent enough time with people that he could actually start to submit papers to different journals, and you know, ended up having these things published here, there, and the other place. And then here's the example. This one faculty member, Edward Ross of Madras Christian College, whom Ramanujan had met, came into Ramanujan's class one day and asked his students, does Ramanujan know Polish? Because there was a paper that Ramanujan had anticipated, a work of a Polish mathematician whose paper had just arrived in the mail. In those days, people would mail copies of their papers to other mathematicians so they'd know what was going on. And Ramanujan had done much more than this guy had done. And this guy was in Poland. So where in the world is Ramanujan even getting these ideas from? And one of the problems was that Ramanujan is a Brahmin, and he was told that he should not leave India. But finally, his mother had a vivid dream in which the family goddess commanded her to have her son go and fulfill his purpose in life. And so with that, in 1914, he went off to England, and so forth. So you know, this went on and on. Hardy had asked for some proofs, and so Ramanujan already sent him 120 theorems, but there were many, many more coming. And Hardy saw some of them were wrong, some of them had been already discovered, but there were just a lot of new breakthroughs, and he'd just never seen anything like this. So they collaborated for a 5-year period until his health failed. He did get a degree. He had no degree up to this point, but the equivalent of what you get just before getting a doctorate in 1916. And then he was elected to the London Mass Society, and he was elected a fellow of the Royal Society, and on and on. He just got honor after honor, and finally went back to India and died there in 1920. So all of his handwritten notes went into these notebooks, and his wife had these, and her adopted son, you know, ended up digging these things out, and in 1976 they became public records. The thing about him was he was apparently very shy and quiet, but he always lived a simple life as an Orthodox Hindu, and he always accredited everything to the family goddess Namagiri Thayer, or the goddess Mahalakshmi. Bruce, do you know anything about this?
No.
Yeah. Okay. And you know, again, an equation for me has no meaning unless it expresses a thought of God. And Ramanujan once said that all religions seemed equally true to him, and that his religious beliefs had been romanticized by Westerners and overstated in reference to his belief, not his practice. But at the same time, he was a strict vegetarian. So, you know, he's the claim is that he has some sort of mystical powers that allows them to do this sort of mathematics. Well, he's recorded everything in all of his notebooks everywhere, and the only thing people could think of was that he had intermediate results that he wrote down because he had on a slate with some chalk that he couldn't afford any paper, and so he would erase them on the slate, and all you would see is the final results, having no idea how he'd done it. And so it goes. The taxi cab number is a very famous one, that the so-called Hardy Ramanujan number, where it's the smallest integer that can be expressed as the sum of two positive integer cubes. So 1729 is by the way, this is the first one is the number, the first one, the number one. You have 1 cubed plus 1 cubed is 2. So the 2 is the very first one that you could come up with. But 729 is 1 cubed plus 1728, or it's 729 9 cubed plus 1,000 to get to 1729. And you know, he just kind of throws this out as, oh, it's totally obvious, isn't it? This is just who he is. So different ways of being a mystic. And Ramanujan, we'll see, but there's a lot of activity today, literally in the 2020, 2021 timeframe of applying what Ramanujan developed into all kinds of areas of mathematics, but also going into physics. So we'll see what happens. We haven't heard the end of Ramanujan. So with that, what else do we have? Anything?
I think it's interesting that, well, Einstein said that most of his insights came through his intuition rather than logic. And he worked out the math after the fact. And we don't think of intuition as part of science or math. And yet it clearly can be.
Yeah, but all different ways of mystic experiences. Just there's something there. But you have something?
Yeah, so what you're saying is mathematicians are like codependent because they have to prove it. You know, it's all left brain, and where the mystics, you know, the creative people are right brain. I tend to be intuitive, and I used to drive my teachers crazy because I would just have the answer, and then but without having the proof there, and they, of course, they would fail me because I hadn't proved it, even though I had the right answer.
Well,
Sure. Now, there's a lot to that. There's many,
Well, the
many,
proof is left brain. That's working out the details after the fact. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, in
Well, yeah.
mathematics, they're called folk theorems. That is, everyone knows they're true, it's just that no one has a clue how to prove it.
Well, that's true of most of geometry, isn't it? They're
Well, it depends on, there's a gazillion examples I could give you of folk theorems and all kinds of different areas, mathematics. So, you know, the rigor sometimes it occurs years after someone said something ought to be true. So we saw, you know, as an example that we covered earlier, we had this Italian mathematician Calabi, who came up with this idea for these manifolds that he thought would be useful in mathematics. But it took, he did that in 1954, but it took till 1979 to prove that they actually existed and had all these properties that they wanted. No one doubted that they were there, but to actually prove it took that long. And the doing the proof was such a great accomplishment that the guy who did it was awarded a Fields Medal, which is the mathematics equivalent of a Nobel Prize. So it was not something trivial, okay? But so it goes, you know. Anyway, that's about it for today.
any questions or comments from anybody?
We're trying to be more multimedia.
I want to go back to the beginning and Marge, you said, Bart said revolution and Marge said struggle. And I really like, I really like the concept of struggle, because when you say revolution, people are thinking war and blood and everything. And revolution doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way we think of it. Frederick Douglass, there must be a struggle. There is no change without struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will.
Right.
Very, very good point. Yeah, I don't know why that seems to be true. You know, these things seem like self-evident truths, as it's been said. And yet it does seem to require this struggle. You know, I guess that's the primordial, you know, good and evil. I don't know. I've been really banging my head against this for the past 10 years. I used to kind of hypothetically allow for the possibility of evil because I hadn't experienced it personally, but now I have, you know, and it's not something in one place in the world. It's not something that's lost in history. It's going on now in broad daylight. And I can't say that I really do understand the purpose, you know, and why we are in the position of struggling against it. But it seems to be very significant. It seems to be a large part of the human condition and the human purpose.
I keep going back to the Book of John, you know, as a mystic, and you know, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And so, even though only 5% of the universe is lightness, it's going to keep expanding. There's going to be more and more light as we move forward here. So, you know, I have hope, and I'm with you on evil. I don't like to think about it, but it certainly is there, And like you said, it's obvious now that it's out in the daylight. Now we can talk about it, and we can bring together other like-minded or like-hearted people. The other thing is we have these vertical silos we communicate in, and we need to smash these silos so we communicate horizontally rather than vertically. But the guy you were just talking about, I was listening to a tape of Desmond Tutu that NPR had taped a couple of years ago, and he was in the same place, and in South Africa, he's talking about Christian Jews, Muslims, and Hindus, and Gandhi's back and forth between India and South Africa, and how Desmond Tutu could remain compassionate and joyful, and his humility, it blows my mind. It's just, if he can do that, there's hope.
Right. Now, it was amazing that he wore down the white supremacists. That.
And it was his pacifism that did it. And I believe he said if he had been, one thing is that if he had been released sooner, there would have been such riots that it would have been destructive. And he was advised that. And so he voluntarily agreed and offered to stay in, I don't know, for another 5 years or something until the people would be ready. I mean, that's just like an incredible sacrifice.
Yeah.
For the greater good that he made. And interestingly, there was a lot of cross-pollination between Thoreau and Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Tutu. It was back and forth.
Right.
And also, who was the Russian? I always get them mixed up. Tolkien and who are the other two?
You mean Sakharov or?
No, begins with a T. From the 1800s.
Tolstoy.
Tolstoy and yeah, thank you.
Dostoevsky.
And Dostoevsky, yep.
The ultimate existentialists.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So we will plug ahead with a different topic next week. Thank everybody for coming and have a great weekend.
You're part of our little think tank here. This is a laboratory.
Yeah, Bud, go ahead.
Thank you.
I was just waving goodbye. Peace and blessings. You
Okay.
know, I'm in recovery. I was a lab rat for a long time.
I see. Okay. Great.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.